Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. I hope everybody has had at least a decent day navigating the market here with some choppiness. And as this pullback is kind of continuing, the big question is, how far is this pullback going to go? We do have some macroeconomic pieces of data that I want to talk about today. And also, all the eyeballs are on a big piece of data that will be coming out tomorrow. And we're going to be talking about why this is important in terms of the inflationary kind of barometer that the Fed uses and how this impacts the overall structure of the broader market in the indices. We'll also be talking about here Palantir, what's currently looking like in terms of a technical perspective. And also, let's talk about crypto and especially BMNR, because that's been on the top of my watch list. And full disclosure, I have taken a recent position in BMNR. We'll be talking about it right here, all on the channel. If you're a new or a returning viewer, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos, and let's pop it up on the screen. First things first is Palantir here is consolidating and is holding relatively strong, kind of what we've been talking about in the previous videos. Palantir here at 179, ever since it's had its nice reversal from this 164, this local bottom here, pushing back up here to this 180 area, it's now just trading sideways. And Palantir does have a lot of resiliency, even in the face of a lot of volatility in the market, which is what we're seeing, and even downward pressure. Talking about, the valuation of Palantir here holding strong. And that's his biggest criticism. With such a sky-high price-to-earnings ratio, Palantir is doing very well. And in terms of just hanging out here, in terms of the catalyst, if we see a momentum, a change in the philosophy or the perspective of the market, if momentum comes back in terms of the bullish run, I think the testing of this 189 resistance at all-time high, that's definitely going to be tested. And if that breaks through, I still think $200 per share is on the table for a end of the year target. We'll see if it gets there. Currently in the overnight hours, really not doing much, down slightly, about 52 cents here at 178.59. Not a ton of big catalyst or news, but hey, we know Palantir has been signing a ton of contracts recently. That'll probably continue. It'll just be interesting to see what's going to be that next thing to push it to its all-time highs. Gearing up over here, let's talk about Amit, a big content creator, gave a nice breakdown on the macroeconomic data today, and I like just a quick, concise summary. Talking about here, number one, that jobless claims, they come in here at 218 versus 232,000. This is showing the kind of whole reason that the Fed has signaled another 50 basis points for end of the year in terms of interest rate cuts is because of a weakening labor market. One thing that I do like to see here is that consumer spending, number three, is coming in at 2.5%, up from 0.5% in Q1. This is showing that the consumer is still remaining relatively strong, even though we've seen a weakening labor market. And this is keeping me bullish on the actual broader market for end of the year. On top of that, something that reiterated this was a big retailer, Costco, came out with their earnings today and beat their earnings expectations compared to what the street had expected. Now, Costco is a big signal, I think, to consumer retail confidence in terms of what we're seeing. I love Costco, so I do have a little bit of a bias there. But nonetheless, people are still going in there to get the $1.50 hot dog. So this is showing me here that retail is still very strong in terms of retail sales, what we're seeing with the consumer. And this is keeping me, like I said, bullish. One of the big things that we are seeing, futures are remaining kind of relatively flat right now as we speak. We see the SPY in the overnight hours here up about 21 cents, really not any big movements to kind of put a lot of attention to. What the eyeballs are looking at for tomorrow, and why this is going to be important, especially for a market that's been a little choppiness to the downside here, a little bit closing out into the weekend. Investors here, they're waiting for the release of August PCE data that's going to be coming out on Friday. Now, the PCE data is the Federal Reserve's kind of barometer, like I said, preferred inflationary measure, and economists expect the print to reflect an uptick in inflation. And I think that's actually going to be kind of what the market wants, is a little bit of an uptick, or at least coming in line with expectations for inflationary numbers. And that's because we are currently, the market's priced in at about like an 80 to a 90% confidence going to see 2 more interest rate cuts for a total of 50 basis points for end of the year. If for some reason we see a big reduction in inflation or something like that, and now you have the confidence or the probability that, hey, maybe they're going to hold the next time, that's where you could see possibly a further correction in the market. So this is going to imply some volatility into the broader market. We're talking about kind of where that sways at right now. Currently, we did have a nice closing for the market, a very nice closing for the market that I was impressed with. So far, any types of dips that we've seen in the market, the bulls have really been doing a good job to buy the dip. I will say with full confidence, I think the bears have been fumbling the bag a lot in terms of the structures that are being formulated, the technicals that are being formulated. The bulls have been doing a good job and have been relatively resilient in this whole year of 2025. The market here closes at 6,600, and this was a strong resistance point. I think if we can hold support here at this 6,600, if PCE, if the inflationary data looks good, we can have another testing at least to that 6,650, possibly to the most recent all-time high, which is the market all-time high at 6,700. If for some reason we continue to see the sell-off, then hey, it's going to be down to the mid 650s, and we're going to probably remain trading choppy there. From the peak to the trough, what we've seen is about a 1.5% pullback. So far in the general scheme of things, this pullback is miniature. It is ants to the elephant, and that is AI right now, with a lot of bullish momentum that is continuing into the market. So far, that is the reason I am remaining bullish. And that's because when I look on X right here and I look at all the different posts and things, is that even with the small pullback, 1.5%, you have everybody signaling these alarms. You can kind of feel the whole sentiment does change, the whole persona. Everything is changing with a small little pullback right here. This is why it's important to not get too emotional into the market. We're going to see dips. We've had like 3 red days now, but before that we had like 10 to 12 green days. So a little bit of a pullback here. I think this is relatively healthy for the market. Now, talking about dips, let's talk about a much bigger dip. And before we get too far, look at this right here. Trump here to impose a 50% tariff on kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities. And I love this. No, not the cabinets in vanities. It's like, what the heck is this? I know this has to do with like importing and things like that, but it is still funny to see nonetheless. Now, talking about crypto, the big elephant in the room to address here is Ethereum has pulled back. Now, Ethereum was at around this $4,600 level about a week ago. A week later, right now, we see Ethereum here actually losing this $4,000 support zone, coming down here to about 38.37, and is now kind of maintain a little bit of some buying pressure, trading sideways right here at 39.54. The big thing for Ethereum and Tom Lee in terms of BMNR, we've seen reports that Tom Lee is continuing to buy Ethereum right now on the dip, because I believe this is below their current average cost at 3953 right here. Palantir is kind of in this correction territory. Now, a lot of people are saying, is Ethereum basically shaking out the bulls? A lot of liquidity, a lot of margin calls that we're seeing in the crypto markets, getting ready for that bottom and the Q4 rally, because we typically see crypto do pretty well in terms of the Q4, November, December, and November is a very good market for the general, a very good month for the general market. Where BMNR came down here today is about 49.78, and we've actually seen a relative pullback, most likely just due to Ethereum here. Now, BMNR was able to have this last local bottom here at 40, pops up here to 64, which is kind of this area that we've seen at the last kind of recent resistance points at this mid 60s and 70s area. Coming down here, BMNR starts to slowly, and I see a double bottom that gets touched here. Bottom right here, a little bit of a reversal, and I get into an entry position right here at a bottom in terms of just purchasing a single leap contract, looking to get possibly some exposure to Ethereum and get some exposure to that Q4 rally that I am anticipating. Now, of course, this is very volatile, has a lot of speculation behind it. However, I do really like Tom Lee. I really like Fundstrat. And in terms of their overall goal of achieving 5% of the Ethereum supply and what they're doing in terms of going to be with staking, how they're going to be utilizing their actual stock to purchase more Ethereum, keeps me very bullish, and he's very bullish on that. So I don't really want to miss that. In terms of here, this could of course go down more because, like I said, Ethereum is more in this correction type of territory. However, if this bottom is priced in, if we see any type of bullishness, then it could be a decent entry, but there is still room for the downside here. I still see a lot of bears talking about Ethereum Ethereum. I don't technically look at Ethereum a lot. It's more just kind of my own conviction, my own personal gut feeling. And that's sometimes as important as to try to find your own personal gut feeling, especially with making more speculative trades. And of course, not putting all your eggs in one basket, because you can get your pants pulled down to your knees in the matter of just a few seconds, especially when the market is pulling back right now. However, like I said, I'm still bullish for the end of the year. So that's what I'll be keeping on my watch list, keeping in terms of the other stocks that we've talked about: ASTS, Nebius, Oklo pulling back here. I mean, Oklo's had a huge run. CoreWeave, Hood, all kind of sitting around these all-time high areas. So I am not becoming scared yet. We'll see what happens with the PCE data tomorrow. Peace out, take care, and have a great night.